The stars above Earth changed that morning. Captain Lee noticed it first from his station on Sentinel-7, the orbital defense platform that circled the planet like a silent guardian. His coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips as the sensors began screaming warnings across every monitor in the command center. 300 signatures, 300 massive objects dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Lee had served in Earth's defense forces for 15 years, and he had never seen anything like this. The computer calculated the size of each vessel. They were enormous, each one larger than an aircraft carrier, bristling with weapons that the scanners could barely identify. "Get me Admiral Park," Lee said quietly. His hands moved across the controls with practiced efficiency, pulling up every detail the sensors could gather. Around him, his crew worked in focused silence. They had trained for this moment, even though most of them had secretly hoped it would never come. The alien fleet moved with purpose through the outer solar system. They passed Neptune without slowing down. They ignored the mining stations on Uranus. They had one clear destination, and everyone watching the sensors knew exactly where they were heading: Earth. In Geneva, inside a building that most people thought was just another government office, the Unified Defense Council gathered within minutes. Admiral Park Menu sat at the head of the table, his weathered face showing no emotion as he reviewed the data streaming in from every observation post in the solar system. Around him sat representatives from every nation on Earth, but there were no arguments today, no political debates. When something came from the stars with hostile intent, humanity had learned to speak with one voice. President entered the room and everyone stood. She was a small woman with steel in her eyes, someone who had risen through politics by never backing down from a challenge. She took her seat and looked at the main display showing the approaching fleet. "How long until they reach Earth?" she asked. "At their current speed, 72 hours, Admiral Park replied. "They're not trying to hide. They want us to see them coming." "Have they attempted communication?" "Yes, Madam President. Doctor established contact 20 minutes ago. Their message was not friendly." The screen shifted to show a recording. An alien face appeared, reptilian in appearance with 4 eyes and scales that shimmered with an oil-slick rainbow effect. The creature wore what appeared to be military decorations across its chest. When it spoke, the translation software turned its words into flat, emotionless English. "I am commander of the Empire. You primitive beings occupy a world that we have claimed. You will surrender all military forces and submit to rule within 24 hours. If you resist, we will demonstrate the price of defiance. Your weapons are toys. Your technology is ancient. You have one day to accept the inevitable." The recording ended. President stared at the blank screen for a long moment. "They've done this before," said Doctor, who had joined the meeting via video link from her laboratory. She was Earth's leading expert on alien languages and cultures, one of the few people who knew the full truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. "I've analyzed their speech patterns and compared them to our databases. The Empire has conquered 17 different star systems in the past century. They follow a pattern. They arrive with overwhelming force, they demand surrender, and they never negotiate." "Then they've never met humans before," President said softly. She turned to Admiral Park. "Initiate Protocol 7, all phases." Admiral Park nodded. He had been waiting for this order, hoping he would never hear it, but ready nonetheless. "Madam President, once we begin, there's no going back. They'll see it as an act of war." "They already see us as conquered," the President replied. "We're just slaves who don't know it yet. That's what they think. Let's show them what humans really are." On Sentinel-7, Lee received his orders through encrypted channels. His face remained calm, but his heart beat faster. Protocol 7. The words meant everything was about to change. He stood from his command chair and walked to the window that looked out at Earth below. The planet turned slowly, blue and white and beautiful, home to 8 billion people who had no idea that their entire civilization balanced on the edge of a knife. "Sir," his second-in-command said quietly, "they are hailing us again." Lee returned to his station. The alien commander's face appeared once more on the screen, and this time there was something like amusement in those 4 eyes. "We have scanned your orbital station," said. "We have mapped your satellites. We know the location of every military base on your planet. You have nothing that can harm us. You are children playing with firecrackers while we command the lightning. Surrender now, and we will allow your species to serve the Empire. Resist, and we will reduce your cities to ash." Lee glanced at his orders on the screen beside him. He had permission to respond. He chose his words carefully. "Commander, I am Captain Lee of Earth's Unified Defense Forces. My president wishes to speak with you directly. We ask that you hold your position while we prepare a proper response to your arrival." "You ask?" The alien commander made a sound that might have been laughter. "You are in no position to ask anything. We will reach your moon in 60 hours. We will take up positions around your planet, and then you will surrender or you will die. There is no third option." The transmission cut off. Lee sat back in his chair and allowed himself a small, grim smile. The aliens were so confident. They had scanned Earth's defenses and saw exactly what they expected to see: a primitive world with basic fusion drives and conventional weapons. They saw satellites that could barely communicate across the solar system. They saw military bases that still used chemical rockets. They saw what Earth wanted them to see. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility that didn't exist on any public map, Doctor watched the same data streams that Lee was seeing. Around him, technicians worked at stations filled with technology that would have seemed like magic to most of humanity. Screens showed equations that rewrote physics. Monitors displayed energy readings that should have been impossible. "Begin power-up sequence," said quietly. "Full activation in 71 hours. "Sir," one of his technicians asked nervously, "are we really going to do this?" Looked at the young woman. She was brilliant, one of the finest physicists on Earth, but she had never seen combat. She had never faced an enemy that wanted to destroy everything she loved. "We're going to give them every chance to leave peacefully," he said. "We'll warn them. We'll explain what will happen if they continue, and if they still refuse to listen." He turned back to his monitors. "Then we'll show them why Earth doesn't make empty threats." President stood before the cameras in a room that had been built specifically for this moment. The walls were lined with sound-dampening material, and the equipment was military-grade, capable of broadcasting across every frequency known to science. Behind the camera, Admiral Park Menu watched with his arms crossed. Doctor stood ready to translate, though the computers would handle most of that work. "Are we ready?" the president asked. "The fleet is receiving on all channels," confirmed. "They'll hear every word." President nodded and faced the camera. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear, the voice of someone who had practiced diplomacy for decades, but who was also ready to back up words with action. "Commander of the Empire, I am President of Earth. I speak for all of humanity when I say that we have received your message and your ultimatum. We understand that you see us as a primitive species, easy prey for your empire. We understand that you have conquered other worlds before ours. But I want you to understand something about humans. We have survived ice ages and plagues. We have survived wars that nearly destroyed our entire civilization. We have looked extinction in the face more than once, and every time we refused to accept it." She paused, letting her words sink in. Somewhere out beyond Mars, the fleet was receiving this transmission. She wondered if they were laughing at her. She hoped they were. Overconfidence would be their downfall. "We do not wish to fight you," she continued. "We have no desire to be your enemies, but we will not surrender our world, our freedom, or our future. This is our only warning, and I urge you to take it seriously. You have 72 hours to turn your fleet around and leave our solar system. If you do this, there will be no conflict. We will part as neutral parties, and perhaps one day we might even become allies. But if you continue your approach, if you refuse to respect our sovereignty, then you will face consequences that you cannot imagine." President leaned closer to the camera, and her voice dropped lower, more serious. "We have prepared for this day. We have built defenses that your scanners cannot detect. We possess technology that will seem impossible to you. This is not a bluff. This is not desperation. This is a simple statement of fact. Leave now or face the full defensive capability of Earth. The choice is yours, Commander. Choose wisely." The transmission ended. The President stepped away from the camera and let out a long breath. Admiral Park handed her a cup of tea. "Do you think they'll listen?" she asked. "No," the Admiral replied honestly. "Empires like theirs don't get where they are by backing down from threats, but now we've followed protocol. We've given them every chance." On the command deck of the flagship, Commander watched the human president's message with his officers gathered around him. When it ended, several of them made sounds that were the equivalent of laughter. One of his weapons officers actually slapped his console in amusement. "Hidden defenses," the weapons officer said. "Impossible technology. Do they really think we're that stupid?" "They're desperate," another officer added. "They know they can't win, so they're trying to scare us away with empty words." Said nothing. He had been a military commander for 3 decades. He had led the conquest of 4 different worlds. He knew what desperation looked like, and something about the human president's message bothered him. There had been no fear in her voice, no pleading, just a calm warning, as if she was simply stating facts that she expected him to accept. "Commander," his science officer said, "we've completed our scan of the human system. I have a full tactical analysis." "Show me," ordered. The main display lit up with a holographic representation of Earth's solar system. The science officer highlighted various points with a laser pointer. "They have approximately 200 satellites in orbit around their planet. Most are communication satellites, some are weather monitors, a few appear to be scientific instruments. They have 12 space stations, all civilian. We detected 73 military bases on the planet's surface, equipped with conventional missiles and aircraft. Their most advanced vessels are fusion-powered cargo ships with basic defensive weapons. Their orbital platforms, like the one where that captain spoke to you, carry particle beam weapons and kinetic missiles. Effective against other human vessels, completely useless against our shields." "What about hidden installations?" asked. "Underground bases, cloaked weapons?" The science officer hesitated. "Sir, we've scanned the entire planet with deep penetration radar. There are underground structures, yes. Subway systems, bunkers, storage facilities. Nothing that suggests military installations beyond what you'd expect from a pre-interstellar civilization." "And you're certain our scans are accurate?" "Commander, our technology is centuries beyond theirs. If they had weapons capable of threatening us, we would detect them." Nodded slowly. Perhaps he was being paranoid. Perhaps the human president's confidence was just a brave face hiding terror. He had seen it before on other worlds. Leaders who stood firm right up until the moment his ships opened fire, and then they crumbled. "Very well," he said. "We will demonstrate our power, target one of their outer system installations. Something big enough to make an impression but far enough from there that they understand we're being merciful. Sir, there's a mining station on one of the moons of their gas giant. It appears to be abandoned but structurally intact." "Perfect, destroy it." The weapons officer worked his controls with practiced efficiency. The flagship's main particle beam cannon powered up, drawing energy from the ship's reactor. At this range, even a glancing hit would vaporize a small moon. The officer locked onto the target and fired. Light lanced across space, invisible to the naked eye but devastating in its power. The mining station on Jupiter's moon simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a collection of domes and equipment. The next moment, there was only an expanding cloud of plasma and debris. "Transmission to the humans," ordered. "That was a warning. Next time we target one of their cities, they have 48 hours to surrender." On Sentinel-7, Lee watched the destruction of the mining station with a heavy heart. It had been abandoned for 5 years, but it still hurt to see it destroyed. They were making their point clear. They had the power to erase anything they wanted. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving the response." Lee listened to Commander's threat. 48 hours now instead of 72. The aliens were getting impatient. Good. Impatient enemies made mistakes. "Open a channel," Lee said, "direct to their flagship." When Space appeared on screen, Lee stood straight and looked directly into the alien's 4 eyes. "Commander, I need you to understand something. Earth has been visited by other species before you, peaceful ones who came as friends. They warned us that the galaxy was dangerous. They told us that eventually someone like you would arrive, someone who saw us as weak and thought conquest would be easy. So we prepared. We spent 200 years building defenses that you cannot see and developing technology that you don't understand. The President gave you 72 hours because we believe in giving fair warning, but you just reduced that to 48 hours with your demonstration. So let me be clear. In 48 hours, if you're still in our solar system, you will face the consequences. And Commander, those consequences will be permanent." Stared at the human for a long moment. Then he laughed, a harsh sound that made his scales rattle. "You speak of consequences while we hold all the power. You speak of technology while using equipment we abandoned centuries ago. Your warnings mean nothing, human. We will reach your planet. We will take what we want, and you will either serve or die." The transmission cut off. Lee sat down heavily in his chair. His crew looked at him with worried faces. "Did we really give them every chance?" one of them asked quietly. "Yes," Lee replied. "Now we wait and see if they're smart enough to take it." The final hours passed like a slow march toward destiny. The fleet moved through the solar system with steady confidence, past Mars, past the asteroid belt, toward the blue planet that hung in space like a jewel waiting to be claimed. Commander stood on his bridge and watched Earth grow larger on the main display. Soon, very soon, it would be over. On Earth, Major oversaw the evacuation of Sol, not the panicked, chaotic evacuation that most people imagined. This was orderly, practiced, almost casual. People walked calmly into subway stations and government buildings, following routes they had practiced in drills for years. But these weren't ordinary shelters they were heading toward. "Floor 83 secured," one of his officers reported, moving to 84. Nodded. "Floor 83 underground." Most people thought the subway went down 5 or 6 levels. They had no idea that beneath Sol, beneath every major city on Earth, there existed an entire civilization. Floors and floors of living space, built over a century of secret construction. Power generators that drew energy from the planet's core. Water recycled so efficiently that nothing was wasted. Food stores that could last for years. Humanity had learned the hard way that survival meant preparation. "Sir," another officer said, "we're getting some resistance. Some people don't want to leave their homes." "Tell them this is not optional," replied. "Use force if necessary, but be gentle. We're saving them, not imprisoning them." Above ground, cities around the world emptied. New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, all of them followed the same pattern. Billions of people moving underground into spaces that had been prepared for exactly this scenario. The surface would be empty when they arrived. They would find a planet that looked abandoned, and they would wonder where everyone went. In orbit, Lieutenant Nam checked his instruments for the 100th time. His ship, the Silent Thunder, was one of 43 stealth destroyers that formed Earth's hidden fleet. Right now, to the sensors, his ship didn't exist. It was cloaked by technology that bent light and scattered radiation in ways that made the vessel invisible to every form of detection the aliens possessed. "Status," he asked his crew. "All weapons charged," his weapons officer reported. "Quantum displacement torpedoes ready, main cannon at full power, defensive screens on standby." "How long until the reach lunar orbit?" 58 minutes, sir." Nam settled back in his command chair. 58 minutes until everything changed. He thought about his family, now safely underground in. His wife had asked him if he was scared. He had lied and said no. But the truth was that he was terrified, not of dying, but of failing. If Earth's defenses didn't work, if the technology that they had been promised was impossible, then humanity would be enslaved or destroyed. Everything depended on the next hour. The fleet formed up as they approached the moon. 300 warships, arranged in a formation that had conquered 17 worlds before Earth. Commander watched the planet through his forward screens. It looked peaceful, beautiful even. Soon it would be another jewel in the crown. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving another transmission from the planet." "More empty threats?" asked. "More warnings we're supposed to take seriously." "It's from their Captain Lee again, the one from the orbital platform." "Put him on screen." The human captain's face appeared and noticed something strange. The human wasn't afraid. There was sadness in his eyes, maybe even pity, but no fear. That bothered more than he wanted to admit. "Commander," Lee said quietly, "this is your final warning. You have reached lunar orbit. In 60 seconds your deadline will expire. If you do not begin retreat procedures immediately, Earth's defensive systems will activate. I'm begging you now, not as a military officer, but as someone who has seen what these systems can do. Turn your fleet around. Leave our solar system. Because if you cross the line we've drawn, there's no coming back from what happens next." Studied the human's face. He was searching for the tell, the sign that this was a desperate bluff. But Lee just looked tired and sad, like someone watching a friend about to make a terrible mistake. "Captain," said slowly, "I have scanned your entire planet. I have mapped every satellite, every ship, every weapon. You have nothing that can touch us. Nothing. So either show me these legendary defenses right now or accept your defeat." Lee closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, there was steel there. "You want to see them? Fine, maybe you're right. Maybe you'll look at what we have and decide to fight anyway, but at least you'll die knowing that we tried." He gestured off-screen. "Doctor, Defense Platform 7. Something changed in space near Earth. One of the satellites that they had dismissed as a simple communications relay suddenly stopped being a satellite. The cloaking field dropped away, and what appeared in its place made every sensor on the flagship scream warnings. The platform was massive, easily the size of a cruiser. Its surface bristled with weapons that the science officer couldn't identify. Energy readings spiked off the scale. The technology signature was completely foreign, using principles that shouldn't be possible. "What is that?" demanded. "That's one of 2,000 platforms just like it," Lee said calmly. "They're positioned throughout near-Earth space. Each one carries weapons that can crack a moon in half. And Commander, that's just the first layer of defense." "Impossible," said, but his voice lacked conviction now. "Our scans would have detected them." "Your scans saw what we wanted you to see. We've had 200 years to perfect our cloaking technology. We learned from species far more advanced than yours, but there's more. Captain Nam, would you like to say hello?" Suddenly, space around the fleet came alive with new contacts. 43 warships appeared from nowhere, surrounding the alien armada. They were smaller than the vessels but carried energy signatures that made the defensive platform look weak by comparison. Lieutenant Nam's face appeared on a second screen next to Lee. "Commander," Nam said formally, "I command the stealth destroyer Silent Thunder. Each of my ships carries enough firepower to destroy your entire fleet 3 times over. We've been tracking you since you entered our solar system. We've counted the rivets on your hulls. We've mapped every weak point in your shields. We know exactly where to hit you to cause maximum damage." Felt something cold settle in his chest. This wasn't a bluff. He could see it in the sensor readings, in the way his officers were frantically working their controls, trying to understand what they were seeing. The humans had hidden an entire military fleet. They had technology that his science officer said was theoretically impossible, and they had given him multiple warnings, chances to escape, opportunities to avoid disaster. "There's still time," Lee said softly. "You have 30 seconds before your deadline expires. Give the order to retreat, Commander. Take your fleet and leave. Tell your empire that Earth is not worth the cost, because I promise you the cost will be everything you have." Looked at his officers. They were waiting for his command. Some looked frightened now. Others looked angry, ready to fight. He thought about the 17 worlds his empire had conquered. He thought about his own reputation, built on decades of successful campaigns. If he retreated now, he would be seen as a coward. But if he attacked and lost, his empire would lose 300 warships, thousands of crew members, and all credibility in this sector of space. Pride, it always came down to pride. "All ships," said slowly, "power weapons, lock onto the human platforms and vessels. We did not come all this way to be frightened by smoke and mirrors." On Sentinel-7, Lee closed his eyes. He had tried. They had all tried, but some species only learned through pain. "Admiral Park," Lee said into his communicator. "The commander has made his choice. Deadline has expired. Authorization code Alpha 77 Omega. Defensive systems weapons free." "Confirmed," Admiral Park Minu's voice came back. "May God forgive us for what happens next." The countdown reached 0, and space around Earth transformed into something from a nightmare. The first indication, Commander, had that something was catastrophically wrong came when his flagship's shields simply stopped existing. No gradual failure, no warning from his engineering team. The shields that had protected his vessel through 100 battles just vanished as if they had never been there at all. The second indication came when 2,000 defense platforms opened fire simultaneously. The weapons weren't like anything in the arsenal. There were no bright beams of energy, no missiles trailing fire. Instead, reality itself seemed to twist around the alien ships. The quantum entanglement cannons didn't just break apart matter. They reached down to the fundamental level where atoms held themselves together and said, "No, you don't get to do that anymore." Watched in horror as his port weapons array simply unraveled. The metal hull didn't melt or explode. It stopped being metal. The atoms that made up the structure forgot how to bond with each other and drifted apart as individual particles. Within 3 seconds, a section of his ship, the size of a city block, had been reduced to loose atoms floating in space. "Shields," he screamed at his engineering team. "Get the shields back online." "They're not offline, sir," his chief engineer replied, his voice shaking. "They're gone. The humans did something to the shield generators. They're not damaged, they just won't work. It's like physics stopped obeying the rules." Across the fleet, the same thing was happening to every ship. The Silent Thunder and its sister vessels had dropped their cloaking fields completely now, and they were moving through the alien formation like sharks through a school of fish. Lieutenant Nam's ship phased in and out of normal space, existing in multiple quantum states at once. The targeting systems couldn't lock onto something that was technically in several places simultaneously. "Target the flagship's engines," Nam ordered. "Disable, don't destroy, not yet." His weapons officer fired a single torpedo. It wasn't an ordinary projectile. It existed in a probability cloud, taking every possible path to its target at once. When it hit the flagship's engine compartment, it collapsed into a single reality in the exact worst spot possible. The explosion was contained, surgical. Ship could no longer move, but the crew was still alive. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Doctor watched his displays with a mixture of pride and sadness. The engine was operating at 40% power, drawing energy from the quantum vacuum itself, from the space between spaces where virtual particles popped in and out of existence. That energy flowed through cables made of materials that shouldn't be possible, feeding every defense system in Earth's arsenal. Power output stable, one of his technicians reported. All platforms drawing energy normally, no fluctuations. Good, replied. Maintain current output. We don't need to go higher unless they do something unexpected. But they weren't doing anything. They couldn't. They had come expecting an easy conquest, and instead they found themselves completely outmatched. Ship after ship tried to return fire, but their weapons couldn't penetrate the defensive screens that Earth's vessels projected. And every time they locked onto a target, that target simply phased out of existence and reappeared somewhere else. His flagship spun slowly in space, powerless and broken. Around him, his fleet was being systematically dismantled. Not destroyed, he realized. The humans were being careful. They were targeting engines, weapons, shield generators. They were disabling ships, not killing crews. That somehow made it worse. It meant they could destroy the entire fleet anytime they wanted, but they were choosing mercy. Sir, his communications officer said weakly, we're being hailed by the humans. Put it on screen, said. What else could he do? Captain Lee appeared and his face showed no triumph, no joy. He just looked tired. Commander, your fleet has been neutralized. 287 of your vessels have been destroyed. The remaining 13 ships, including your flagship, are disabled. Before you ask, yes, we could have destroyed all 300 ships. We chose not to. We're going to make you an offer now, and I suggest you take it seriously because it's the only one you're going to get. Said nothing. What could he say? His mighty fleet had been crushed in less than 2 minutes. 2 minutes. It had taken longer to conquer most worlds than it had taken Earth to defeat the entire armada. We're going to repair your ships, Lee continued. Just enough so they can make the journey back to your empire. It'll take you about 6 months at your maximum safe speed. That should give you plenty of time to think about what happened here and why. You're going to carry a message back to your leaders. Earth is not interested in conquest. We don't want your territory. We don't want to build an empire, but we will absolutely defend ourselves against anyone who threatens us. Admiral Park Minu appeared on screen next to Lee. Commander, I want you to understand something. The weapons you've seen today are not our most powerful systems. They're just the ones we keep active for situations exactly like this. If we wanted to, we could have destroyed your entire fleet before you even knew we were attacking. We could have ended this battle in microseconds instead of minutes. We gave you time to see what was happening, to understand what you were facing. We wanted you to survive so you could take this lesson back to your people. President's face replaced the military officers on screen. She looked directly with those steel eyes. Your empire has built itself on conquest and fear. You've made other species submit because they had no choice. But Earth has a choice, Commander. We chose to be ready. We chose to build defenses that would make conquest impossible. And now you're going to help us send a message to the galaxy. Earth is not prey. Earth is not weak. And Earth's warnings are never, ever empty threats. The transmission ended. Sat in his command chair and looked at the ruins of his fleet. Through the forward, he could see human ships moving among the wreckage, already beginning the work of repair. They were saving his people, pulling survivors from damaged vessels, providing medical treatment, showing mercy to an enemy who had come to enslave them. It was the most humiliating experience of his life. Over the next 3 days, human engineers worked around the clock to repair the 13 surviving ships. Major oversaw the operation, coordinating between ground teams and orbital crews. He watched survivors being treated in human medical facilities, their injuries carefully tended by doctors who didn't care that these aliens had come to conquer Earth. "Why are you helping us?" one officer asked. The alien was recovering from a broken arm splinted by human medics. "We came to destroy you. Why show us mercy?" Considered the question carefully. Because we remember what it's like to be defeated. We remember wars on our own planet where we showed no mercy to each other and those wars nearly destroyed us. We learned that strength without compassion is just cruelty. We're strong enough to defeat you, yes, but we're also strong enough to help you survive that defeat. Maybe your people will learn from this. Maybe they won't, but we'll give you the chance. Lieutenant Nam escorted the repaired ships to the edge of the solar system. His stealth destroyer followed behind the limping alien fleet like a guardian, making sure they actually left. As they passed Mars, Commander sent one final transmission. Lieutenant Nam, I have a question for you. Go ahead, Commander. How long have you had this technology? When did Earth become so powerful? Nam was quiet for a moment, considering how much to reveal. Then he decided these aliens deserved the truth. 200 years ago, we were visited by a species called They were peaceful explorers who came as friends. They told us that the galaxy was full of species like yours, empires built on conquest. They said eventually someone would come for Earth, so they helped us prepare. They shared some technology, pointed us in the right direction for research, and then they left. They said we needed to be ready, but that we had to do the work ourselves. So we did. Every nation on Earth worked together for the first time in our history. We built these defenses. We developed these weapons. And we waited. We always hoped we'd never have to use them, but we were ready when you arrived. And the warnings, asked, why give us so many chances to retreat? Because humans remember what it's like to be weak, Nam replied softly. We remember being prey. We built all of this not because we wanted to become predators, but because we refused to be victims ever again. We gave you warnings because that's what we wished someone had given us during our darkest times. A chance, an opportunity to make the right choice. You chose to ignore those warnings, Commander. That's on you. The fleet crossed the heliopause and began its long journey home. Behind them, Earth's defenses themselves, returning to invisibility. To anyone scanning the solar system now, it would look like a primitive world with basic satellites and simple weapons, just like before. But now the galaxy would know the truth. Earth protected its own. Captain Lee stood at the window of Sentinel-7 and watched the stars. The fleet was gone now, limping back toward their empire with a message that would change everything. Around him, his crew worked quietly, securing the orbital platform and returning systems to their standby mode. It felt strange, going back to normal after what had happened, like waking from a dream, except the dream had been real. Sir, his communications officer said, we're receiving a priority transmission from the surface. President wants to address the global population. She's asking all defense personnel to observe. Lee nodded and pulled up the broadcast on his main screen. The president appeared, sitting at her desk in the Blue House in Seoul. She looked tired but relieved. Behind her, through the window, the city was coming back to life as people emerged from the underground shelters. Citizens of Earth, President began. 3 days ago, an alien fleet entered our solar system with hostile intent. They demanded our surrender. They threatened to destroy our cities. They believed we were weak and unprepared. Today, I can tell you that they were wrong. Earth's defense forces successfully repelled the invasion without a single human casualty. The alien fleet has been disabled and sent home with a message. Earth is not a target. Earth is not prey. And Earth will defend itself against any threat from any source. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. Many of you are wondering how this was possible. Many of you saw the evacuations and wondered what was happening. I cannot reveal all the details of our defensive capabilities for security reasons, but I can tell you this. For 200 years, every nation on Earth has worked together in secret to prepare for this day. We've built weapons and defenses that most of you never knew existed. We've developed technology that seems impossible. And we did it all while maintaining peace among ourselves, while improving lives, while building a civilization worth defending. Lee felt a swell of pride. The president was right. Humanity had managed to do something extraordinary. They had taken a divided, warring species and united it around a common purpose. Not conquest, not expansion, but simple survival. In his laboratory beneath the Pacific, Doctor oversaw the shutdown procedures for the engine. The massive device cooled slowly. its impossible energy output dropping back to standby levels. His technicians moved efficiently through the process, following protocols they had practiced 1,000 times but never executed for real until 3 days ago. "Doctor," one of his team leaders said, "I have a question. Now that the galaxy knows what we can do, won't that just attract more attacks? Won't other species want to steal our technology?" Considered this. It was a valid concern, one that had been debated at the highest levels for years. "Maybe," he admitted, "but consider the alternative. If we had hidden our capabilities forever, eventually someone would have attacked Earth and caught us unprepared. Better that the galaxy knows we're strong. Better that they understand the cost of threatening us. Yes, some species might want our technology, but they'll also know that trying to take it by force is suicide. And the species who are smart enough to ask for it peacefully, those are the ones we might actually want to share it with someday." On the surface, in cities around the world, people emerged into sunlight and found their lives unchanged. The grocery stores still had food. The power still worked. The internet still connected them. Most people had experienced the evacuation as just another drill, unaware of how close they had come to actual war. But some people knew. Every military officer, every government official, every scientist who had worked on Earth's secret defense projects. They knew how close it had been. They knew that without 200 years of preparation, Earth would have fallen in days. Major walked through the underground levels of Seoul, now mostly empty as people returned to the surface. He found Colonel Han conducting an inspection of the shelter systems, making sure everything was properly secured for next time. "Do you think there will be a next time?" asked. Han looked at him with experienced eyes. She had been in the defense forces for 30 years, had overseen the construction of shelters in 5 different cities. "Yes," she said simply. "Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not for 10 years or 100 years, but eventually someone else will come. Someone who didn't hear the story or someone who thinks they're smarter or stronger, and we'll have to do this all over again. That's why we can never let our guard down. That's why we keep building, keep improving, keep preparing." She gestured at the empty underground halls around them. "These shelters can hold everyone on Earth if necessary. The power systems can run for decades. The food stores can last for years. We built all of this not because we're paranoid, but because we're responsible. We have 8 billion people depending on us to keep them safe. And after what happened 3 days ago, I think we proved we can do exactly that." Lieutenant Nam returned to Earth after escorting them to the edge of the solar system. His ship, the Silent Thunder, docked at one of the hidden orbital facilities that the public still didn't know existed. As he walked through the corridors, other officers saluted him. Word had spread about his role in the battle, about how his stealth destroyers had helped neutralize the alien fleet. But Nam didn't feel like a hero. He felt like someone who had done his job, nothing more. The real heroes were the people who had spent 200 years building the defenses, the scientists who had developed impossible technology, the leaders who had kept the secret while uniting the world. He had just pressed buttons and followed orders. His wife met him at the docking bay, their 2 children with her. They had been underground during the crisis, safe in shelters that Nam had helped design. Seeing them now, healthy and smiling, made everything worthwhile. "Did you really fight aliens?" his daughter asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "We defended our home," Nam replied. "That's all that mattered." In Geneva, Admiral Park Menu sat in a secure conference room with the Unified Defense Council. They were reviewing the battle data, analyzing what had worked and what needed improvement. They had been a formidable opponent, but they had also revealed weaknesses in Earth's defensive strategy. "Our stealth systems worked perfectly," one officer reported. "The aliens never detected our hidden fleet until we revealed ourselves, but their shields were stronger than we expected. It took more power to disable them than the simulations predicted. The quantum entanglement weapons performed above specifications," another officer added. But we need to improve our targeting systems. Some shots missed because the ships moved unpredictably. Admiral Park Minu listened to every report with careful attention. They had won this battle, yes, but there would be other battles, other enemies, other threats. Complacency would kill them faster than any alien weapon. We also need to address the political situation, President said. She had joined the meeting via secure video link. The Empire won't just accept this defeat quietly. They'll investigate. They'll try to understand what happened. And they'll tell other species about us. We need to be ready for diplomatic contact, not just military threats. Doctor spoke up from her position at the table. As Earth's chief, she had a unique perspective on the situation. Madam President, I've been analyzing the language and cultural patterns. Based on what I've learned, I believe Commander will deliver an accurate report to his superiors. The value honesty in military matters, even in defeat. They'll tell the truth about what happened here, and that truth will spread throughout their empire and beyond. Is that good or bad? Admiral Park asked. Both, replied. Good because it means other aggressive species will think twice before attacking Earth. Bad because it means curious species will want to know more about us. We're about to become very famous in this section of the galaxy. President nodded thoughtfully. Then we need to prepare for both scenarios, military threats and peaceful contact. We need to show the galaxy that we're just as capable of friendship as we are of defending ourselves. Months later, Captain Lee was still stationed on Sentinel-7 when the first response came. It wasn't another invasion fleet. It was a diplomatic vessel, flying under a flag of truce, carrying representatives from a dozen different species who wanted to meet the humans who had defeated the Empire. Lee watched the ship approach and allowed himself a small smile. This was what Earth had always wanted. Not war, not conquest, but a place at the table. A chance to join the galactic community as equals, not as victims or aggressors. President greeted the aliens personally, hosting them in a ceremony that was broadcast across Earth. She spoke of peace and cooperation, of shared knowledge and mutual respect. But she also made one thing absolutely clear. Earth would never be threatened again. Earth would never submit to anyone, and Earth's warnings would always be taken seriously. Doctor watched the ceremony from his laboratory and felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The engine sat silent now, its power dormant but ready. It would stay that way unless needed. And maybe, just maybe, it would never be needed again. Maybe the galaxy had learned its lesson. Lieutenant Nam sat with his family and watched the diplomatic ceremony on television. His daughter pointed at the screen, excited to see the different alien species. Will they be our friends? She asked. I hope so, Nam replied. But even if they're not, we'll be ready. Major stood in an empty underground shelter and ran his hand along the wall. This place would stay here, maintained and ready just in case. Because that was what humanity did now. They prepared, they built, they protected, and they never ever forgot what it meant to be vulnerable. The stars above Earth shone as they always had, beautiful and eternal, but now they held a new truth. Humanity had taken its place among them, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as equals. They had earned that place through preparation, through unity, through the willingness to defend what they loved. And if anyone ever forgot, if anyone ever thought Earth was weak or unprepared, well, they could ask the Empire how that assumption had worked out for them. The answer would be simple and clear. Earth's warnings were never ignored twice.